How are you? Jennifer Longmore here, CEO of souljourneys.ca and CEO of the Podcast Connector. And that's kind of what I'm going to be talking to you about today. So welcome. If this is your first time watching me live, let me know in the chat so I can officially welcome you. And if you're used to watching me sing jingles and so on lives, then say hello in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, let me know that too, so I can come back and say hello. So great news. We just found out we got published as one of the most innovative companies for 2023 to watch, and that is for the Podcast Connector. So I'm going to be popping that article in the chat a little bit later below. And we're super proud of that. And we're proud of that for a lot of reasons. One is that we have a unique proprietary method to guarantee bookings for people, and not just anyone, people like you who are thought leaders, messengers, innovators. You have some seasoned interviewing skills under your belt that allow us to pitch you to higher profile podcasts. And so what I want to chat with you about today is how to sell more books using podcast guesting. So I have, just as a little backstory, I used to have online radio shows well over, I'm going to say 15 years ago or so. I have 3 podcasts right now. And so I know a thing or two about authors pitching themselves to be on my show. I have also been on a gazillion podcasts, and I've also sold a ton of books on podcasts, so I know a little thing or two about what happens on that end. But the reason why I want to chat with you today is because like I said, I'm used to getting these pitches. And the worst thing you can do, unless you don't want to get booked on podcasts, if that's your goal, if you want to spend time and energy pitching to get no results, then talk about yourself and talk about the fact that you want to come on to sell your book, right? There's nothing compelling about that. From a host perspective, we spend time, money, and energy building our audience. We care about our audience. We want to bring people on, whether it's ourselves and the content that we curate or someone else. We want to make sure that we're adding value. Yes, it's a free thing for people to enjoy, but it's still their time. And we never want people to feel like they didn't enjoy spending an hour listening to us, for example, right? We don't want people leaving any kind of event, any kind of presentation at all, feeling like there was a gazillion other things they could have done that was a better use of their time. So we still want to be adding value to people. The second reason why I want to chat about this is because we get emails all the time from authors who are fed up. Maybe they got a traditional publishing deal, and what publishing houses don't tell you, and in fact, what most people don't tell you, unless you're an author and you already know this, that a book is essentially a business, right? It requires its own sort of marketing vehicle to go along with it. And there's never enough books to sell, right? You can always sell more books. With a program, maybe there's a start and stop date, but with books, you want to keep selling more and more books. So with traditional publishing, if you get a book deal, they'll give you, let's say, $60K in advance to go and promote your book. And what people usually do with that money is they hire a PR company. Now, this isn't to knock PR companies because I know a ton of amazing ones. But when we're going on major media to sell books, those assets don't really live on the same way as podcasts do. So that can be super helpful, right? It doesn't mean you can't sell books, but a lot of times people were hiring these companies is the point and not even getting a single booking, right? So $60K of their advance going down the drain because they didn't know what to ask. And most people don't. There's a lot of PR companies, and I can refer you to ones that are really great. There are a lot of PR companies that are really good at their own PR and telling you what they can do for you. And I know this from firsthand experience. But then once you get in the door, our understanding, right, as a client is that we're going to be pitched out the wazoo, meaning we're going to be on a ton of features. And in their mind, they're like, well, I pitched you, so I did my job, right? And those are not podcast or PR companies I'd be referring you to. Anyways, with podcasting, it's a little bit different because that person usually has a pretty decent turnaround time for your book, and that asset lives on forever. Right? We all have done this. I've listened to podcasts that were recorded, let's say 4 years ago, because the title of the topic and or the person being interviewed was interesting enough for me to be listening to this podcast while I'm doing whatever else I'm doing, right? I'm sure we're not alone in the fact that I'm maybe writing emails or reading emails or whatever I'm doing, some sort of like low dividend administrative stuff that needs to get done, but I can kind of do it while I'm listening to a podcast, or while I'm driving, or while I'm working out, things like that. And so these podcasts live on forever, and people can listen to them even several years down the road. So this is true of anything, but today we're going to be talking about books. We're going to be talking about it because, like I said, I know what it's like to get pitches from authors, especially some of these high-level authors that seem to think that all they need to do is name drop and say they want to be on your show to promote their book, and that's going to be compelling enough reason, right, to have them take up a very cherished spot of gold, essentially, right, that could be shared with your own IP and you pouring into your own audience, or bringing on another guest that has more of an audience-centric focus as opposed to a me focus, right? So not to say that any of you would do that, by the way, because I know that if we're connected, that you have a level of class and conscientiousness where you just wouldn't allow that to happen. That's just the filter we want to be in, right? Anytime we're pitching ourselves to a host with anything, is that they've spent time, money, and energy building this audience. Their audience trusts them. And then they're extending their know, like, and trust to you to come on their show and speak to their audience. And it's not that we all have to have the same opinions or thoughts or whatever, right? But we do need to feel like, of all the things, of all the features that we could have on our show and the different ways we could pour into our audience, is this guest I'm about to have on actually going to add value to my audience such that they still want to listen to my show, right? And still tell people to listen to my show. So the publishing houses don't tell you, they don't give you some of this intel, right? Now, for those of you that have self-publishing houses, and I know many of you do, many of you that I'm connected with do, I know because we support you either through private labeling or things like that, it's way more bang for your buck. You're maybe investing, $2,000 to be guaranteed on a ton of shows that have a certain amount of downloads, right? We're not pitching you to really new shows, nothing wrong with new shows, right? We all have to start somewhere, but we're pitching you to people that have, a minimum of 10,000 downloads, right? Which is actually a big deal to get to that point. And then of course, higher than that. And so when that type of podcast lives on, when that host takes their podcast serious enough to have 10,000 downloads a month, as an example, they're doing a lot of the marketing for you, right? They need to do that. Having a podcast and a book are similar in the sense that they both actually require their own marketing wheel. They contribute and pour into the business, of course. All roads lead back to you, but they still kind of have to be treated a little bit like a business, right? And there's a whole marketing engine that goes behind them. So you're not only marketing being on these shows, but someone else is marketing for you, and you're borrowing their know, like, and trust. And when you go on and you tell stories instead of talk at people, they get to know you. They're entertained, because stories entertain, right? And stories sell. They're entertained. They're getting to know you and your personality. They're already intrigued. Maybe they're already sold on you. And then if you can give some examples of what you're covering in the book, of course, without giving away the whole farm, but giving enough of a taste of what to expect in the book, but leaving people feeling like, oh, I definitely need to get this book if I want to get the whole story. Or if your book is very much a process-oriented book, like do this, do this, do this, so that you can get this, they have no choice but to get the book, right? Because they're going to be missing essential pieces. But all of that to say that podcasting, or podcast guesting, I should say, is a really great way, again, because you're leveraging people's audiences. With us, you're getting guaranteed bookings. And that's just my own preference, because I've, like I said, dealt with a lot of PR companies, and I know what it's like to think that you're getting a bunch of bookings when in fact you're just getting a bunch of pitches, and that can get very, very costly, right? So that's why when I decided to buy the company, I added in the guaranteed piece so that it gives you peace of mind, essentially, right, to know. And so it doesn't mean you have to do it with us, but I would highly recommend that if you're going to find a company to go with, that they guarantee it. And there are PR companies, by the way, that guarantee placements as well, right? So that's the type of PR company that I'd be recommending that you go with if that's what you want to do. And I think it's still good to do both strategies. One is a little more time sensitive, right? The media coverage gets buried after a day. So it's then on you to not only market the book, but then market your media assets of you being interviewed about the book to kind of pull it all together, right? And that's unless you're a really master marketer, that's either something that's going to fall fall on the wayside, or you're going to have to hire someone and again invest even more money helping you market that kind of stuff. So not to say you shouldn't do that, but that is kind of what it's going to be like. And I know this having done a lot of TV as well, right? And then with podcasts, like I said, they live on forever. These are assets that you can be putting on your website. And additionally, you're developing a relationship with the host. And so one of the things I always recommend when you're done your interview is to ask the host, hey, do you happen to know any other shows that you think would be a really great fit for me to be on? Do you happen to know any other hosts that would be interested in having me come and add value to their audience on this particular topic? And podcast hosts are very connected. So it's highly likely that you're going to walk away with at least one referral, right? But you're probably going to walk away with at least half a dozen introductions. And so then you're also compounding your efforts, right? Instead of having to constantly expend time and energy and potentially money pitching yourself to other shows, you're going to then also tap into their relationship currency, right? So you're tapping into their know, like, and trust, and you're tapping into their relationship currency to help you sell more books. I see it time and time again. I can't even tell you the amount of people that I talk to that are authors that when they finally do a dedicated book tour or book launch, depending on the situation, even if you have books that were published, let's say 5 years ago, you can still kind of, reinvigorate sales of the books if that's your goal. And it's leading back to something as well, right? When you do a dedicated book launch through podcast guesting. So I will say that it's always good when you're guesting to have a really easy to remember freebie, one that you're married to enough that if in 5 years someone listens to the show, that is still going to be an active link for you. And so I'm a big fan of for example, in my company with Soul Journeys, we have one that's more for Ascension. So we do souljourneys.ca/soul. Think about how easy that is to call out on a podcast, right? Even because people are probably not going to have a pen and paper ready. And you're also dependent upon the host actually adding these links to the show notes, right? And uploading to YouTube and stuff. People may not see that. And so what's an easy link that you can call out? Bitly? No, nobody's going to remember the Bitly links, even though you make them nice and short and sweet. Nobody listening is going to be able to remember that, right? It's like when you call the bank and they say, okay, I'm going to give you your reference number for this call that we had today. And they go on and on and on. There's like 37 characters essentially, right? We both know that we're not remembering that code. The same is true for Bitly links. We also have one about money. So that's souljourneys.ca/money. And I'm really clear on what that's about. And so that's easy stuff to remember, right? People are really good at remembering domain names because we're just so tuned into that. And then just something very short, not something like free master book like on and on and on. People will tune out. They only have so much listening capacity. And then the other thing is I would already know how you're going to circulate that podcast interview, right? What are the different strategies that you're going to use to keep marketing that material? So, for example, not everyone is audio. Like they're not necessarily wired to listen to things. So you can run that kind of stuff through AI transcribers, or you can hire a transcriber, right, to do your interview and include it. I would be looking anyways at giving people a reason to buy your book, right? What's an extra little something that they're going to get just from listening to the show? Are you going to create another special freebie for people to get access to once they buy the book? And how are you going to systematize that, right? So that they only get the link if they buy the book. And how are you going to know that? But there are ways to do that. So I'd be looking at that. But when you're it could, even if you're not selling the book, even just the discussion of the book and maybe them getting to know you is at least compelling them to come back to your website, which all things aside, right? Getting people onto your email list and following what you're doing and following you on social media is already a big step, right? As far as building relationship and keeping the conversation going to, maybe they will buy the book eventually. Maybe they just aren't a book reader, but they're going to tell everyone they know. Maybe they're going to share the podcast. So how can you show up in a way that adds value, that compels people to want to share it just because the content is so juicy and the interview is so entertaining? And then how can you make sure that you still get to capture their attention by one of your freebies that you're going to share so that you can invite them back to your site and keep building relationship with them? So I hope this helped. This is obviously a very high level conversation, right? There's way more moving parts to this. But what I'm going to propose to you is that if you want to start getting yourself booked on more podcasts and you want to do this yourself, then we're going to post a link in the comments to our free pitching toolkit. We give you all the templates and stuff that we use to pitch our own clients, and you're welcome to go to town and pitch yourself. If you are a savvy CEO like me and other people that I know, and you know the value of your time, and just because you can do something, aka your zone of genius or zone of competence, I should say, doesn't mean you should be doing it because you want to stay in your zone of genius. That's when you would hire our company to get you booked for, or to get you booked, right? We guarantee bookings. So I'm also going to pop a link in the chat to apply to have a call with us. If you're someone that's already been interviewed, then we definitely we're able to support you. If you don't have any interviews under your belt, that's okay. There are other companies that will work with you. There's also ways to at least get a few under your belt, because we need you to have a little bit of street cred, because we have a certain caliber of host we're pitching to, and they're going to require anyone. It's nothing personal. They're just going to require that there are seasoned interviewees on their show, because again, this is their audience that they've spent time, money, and energy building a relationship with. And if they bring on someone who's umming and ahhing through the whole thing, or really pontificating and going into a monologue and not taking a breath, or any kind of other things, which if you have a show, you know what I'm talking about. I know it too, right? I've had some guests on that are like, whoo, I don't know about this, right? So that's why. But then once you get some under your belt, then we're happy to support you. So I'm going to pop those in the link. I hope this was helpful. If it was, let me know in the chat what your takeaway is. And if you feel that this would be helpful to other people in your network, then it would be great if you could share it with them as well. We are really big fans of opening doors for people that we wanted to have open for us. So for example, I was pitching myself for many, many years on tons of stages, selling my own books, getting booked on all kinds of things, radio, TV, all the things. And I had to learn how to pitch really well. And that's what I bring into the company. But I'm now in a place where I want to give back to you and help you open the doors way more quickly and way more efficiently, and really position you as the most obvious choice to say yes to. And basically giving to you what I wished had been available to me way back in the day, that it probably was, but I just wasn't aware of it. So that is the spirit in which we're doing this. We want to get as many messengers out there as possible with their amazing work. The world needs it right now. And so that's why we do what we do. We hope that we can be linking arms with you in some capacity to help you spread your message. So until next time, I'm sending you lots of good juju, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.